Alright, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to another video, guys. Today, guys, I think I have changed my mind about training to failure. In the past, I said you don't want to train to failure because you want to leave reps in the tank so you can perform more sets at optimal intensity, right? So my philosophy used to be leave 1 to 3 reps in the tank so that you can progress week to week and so that you can perform multiple sets with heavier weight. And while I still do agree with this, especially if you're trying to get stronger, I do think there's something to be said about training to all-out failure and obviously doing less sets by doing this. So as you guys know, I'm always experimenting with different things. I'm always trying out different stuff, right? So instead of more volume per exercise, why don't we make our exercises more intense and that way have less sets in those exercises so we can do more exercises, right? So this way is kind of cool because then you can hit the muscle from different angles, and also training to failure for some reason seems to give me a lot better pump than if I cut it a couple reps short of failure. So I'm talking about instead of doing like, let's say 4 sets on bench press with reps in reserve, you could do 2 sets on bench press to failure, and then you could do 2 sets on incline press to failure as well. So you still did 4 sets, but arguably you got more out of that stimulus of those 4 sets simply because you varied the exercise selection and obviously your intensity was a lot higher too. So I know I hated on training to failure previously, and you guys might think I'm kind of a hypocrite now, right? And you know, I still stand by my word that it might be more beneficial to not train to absolute failure. But you know, this kind of unique training style of going to failure and doing more exercises instead with less volume, it's pretty interesting, guys. It's pretty interesting. You know, it's kind of like the Mike Mentzer training style. And it's something that really gives you a really great pump. The problem with it though is that you obviously are weaker after, well, your first set because you went to all out failure, right? So you're basically a lot weaker after your first set versus if you left reps in the tank. But as of right now, I'm experiencing with going to pretty much failure or even 1 rep in reserve just to cut it a little bit shy of failure too. Just because I'm cutting right now, so I'm not really worried about how much weight I'm lifting, if that makes sense. I'm more just worried about, you know, tracking my calories, losing weight, like a pound of body weight per week, as well as doing cardio, and I'm just trying to really stimulate the muscle to basically stay on my body. Because as I said in my previous video, you're not really building muscle when you're cutting, you're more of maintaining it, right? So it kind of gives me an opportunity to mess around with some different training styles, which I think is pretty cool. So I've been rocking 1 to 2 sets to failure on each exercise and simply just doing more exercises. And I'll be honest, it does give me a lot better pump. I enjoy the workouts a lot more. Will I get stronger with this, or let's say put on more muscle while I'm bulking? Well, we don't know yet because I'm not bulking, I'm cutting right now. But the thing is, when you're cutting, your motivation to lift, especially if you're lifting every day, especially if you're tracking calories and you're hungry always, and especially if you're doing cardio as well, your motivation to lift and really actually want to go to the gym, it's basically at an all-time low when your calories are low and you're cutting. So really anything that gets me to want to go to the gym or like try something new while I'm cutting, that's something that I'll really invest into, and I'll give it a shot. Does training to failure build more muscle, let's say? The answer is, nah, they build like the same amount of muscle if you train to failure with less sets versus you leave reps in reserve with more sets. They will build equivocal amount of size. Is there a difference between which one makes you stronger? That I would have to argue in favor of leaving reps in reserve and doing more sets, just because you'll be able to lift heavier weights. If you go to failure and then you try again with the same weight, even like if you rest like 3 minutes or something like that, you definitely will not be able to hit the same amount of reps if you actually went to failure on your first set, right? So yeah, leaving reps in reserve will make you stronger, but I'm sure most of you guys watching are more concerned about building muscle than actually getting stronger, right? Because they're kind of 2 separate things. They're a little bit related, but mostly separate. So in terms of that, I would say they're pretty equal. So I kind of wanted to somehow tie this back to like the classic Arnold versus Mike Mentzer argument / debate thingy, okay? So here we go. So I do think that Arnold overtrained, definitely. I believe I've said this before, but I do also think that Mike Mentzer was not training enough because 2 hours a week it's just really not that ideal for long-term muscle growth and progress, you know? When you first start out in the gym, yeah, you can get away with a lot less time spent in the gym pretty much. But as you progress more and more, your body actually needs more stimulation. I think he was kind of on to something with training to failure and just doing one hard set per exercise. I think he was really on to something, because then you can move on to more exercises. You can actually hit the muscle from a lot more different angles than if you were doing, like, you know, 4 sets on bench, 4 sets on incline, you were calling it a day for chest. It's kind of cool how he would do one exercise, move on to the next after doing one set, move on to the next exercise after doing one set, because this allows you to get like a lot different stimuli. Jumping from exercise to exercise, if you're going to failure, kind of saves some time as well. So I think it's a pretty cool thing. However, you have to be careful going to failure on like really heavy movements like squat, bench, and deadlift. So I was actually doing some really heavy deadlifts the other day. I didn't really hurt anything in my body really. I was just deadlifting and I could kind of feel like my lower back round. And I always try to keep a straight lower back. I always wear a belt when I'm like doing anything that's really bent over. So like RELs, deadlifts, rows, I'm always wearing a belt for that kind of stuff. But if you're going to failure on deadlifts, it's definitely not a good idea, right? Squat, bench, deadlift, I would not go to failure on any of those exercises. I would actually strongly recommend leaving reps in reserve on those exercises, just to prevent injury. And because they are compound movements, they're using like a lot of different joints are all working like synchronizing. So I don't really think it's that beneficial to go to failure on like really big, heavy compound movements. If you're going a little bit lighter, it can be okay, but you actually want to go heavier on your compound movements. So just if you're training to failure on those, just be really careful. I do believe if you train to failure, you can save some time in the gym, just because it's a lot more intense, and the more intense your workouts are, naturally they're going to be a lot shorter. So by training to failure, you're definitely bound to save some time spent in the gym, which is good if you're cutting. I almost think that training to failure is just a lot more geared towards people that are cutting, because the intensity is higher, so the volume is going to be lower. You know, the workouts are going to be shorter, which is good, because when you're cutting, you want to go in, stimulate the muscle to stay on your body, and then get out literally probably as quick as you can. So that way you're not really wasting any time. You're not wasting a lot of energy, because I like to cut fast, you know. I like to knock down the calories by a good amount. I like to go sub 2,000 calories right out the gate. So that definitely takes a toll on you, like mentally and physically too. Like I definitely feel the lack of energy. So, and I still have to do cardio as well. I'm not skipping cardio cutting. I'm doing cardio year round. It's really good for your health, and it's something that everybody should do. I know a lot of people talk about that now, so that's something you definitely don't want to skip out on. But if you're cutting, I would say training to failure is a lot better. That's what I would argue. And it also forces you to use, you know, well, heavier weights. But yeah, like if you're leaving reps in the tank, you're gonna be going a little bit lighter, obviously. That only makes sense. So if you're training to failure, you're gonna be able to do either more weight or more reps, because, well, you're training to absolute failure. So you're gonna, that way it's gonna be more intense. You might actually retain a little bit more muscle. So I think cutting and training to failure kind of go hand in hand. And, you know, bulking and leaving reps in reserve might go hand in hand too, because that way you can progress. I think you can progress better when you're not training to failure, just because the next week it's easier to add weight. Because if you went to complete failure on an exercise and then the next week you tried to add weight, it's not going to end well for you. You'll probably still be at failure. You probably did not get, like, I don't know, let's say you try to add on 5 pounds to each side. You definitely did not get 10 pounds stronger in 1 week just off of movement, unless you're a complete beginner to the gym. So leaving reps in reserve, I believe, is better for bulking. These are just kind of my current standings right now. I'll give you guys probably another updated video on this subject, you know, during the bulk. But each has its advantages, so just do whatever you want. Do whatever makes you happy. Do what lets you have fun in the gym if you're cutting and it's hard for you to actually get the motivation to go lift and stuff like that, all right? All right, well, I think I'm just rambling and I don't even know what we're talking about anymore, so Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like this video. Please comment. Please subscribe. Please let me know what you want to see next, guys. Debate me in the comments. Let's get some controversy going. I'm out, baby. Peace.